It appeared that the Department of Justice sought out a weak, compliant, and acquiescent DA that has the same philosophies as the Biden administration to go soft on crime and then to attack our state law county by county.
Welcome, fellow patriots. This is Kelly Jackson with the Tennessee Conservative News, Tennessee's #1 conservative alternative news. With me today from District 31 in Memphis, Shelby County, is Senator Brent Taylor. Thank you so much, Senator, for being with us today on this Saturday morning. Very balmy, very warm outside, and it's probably even balmier where you are. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you on this balmy Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So we saw the letter that you sent to our Attorney General, Jonathan Skrmetti. Can you tell our viewers, what prompted you to do that and what you are anticipating will be the response from his office?
Yeah, so what precipitated the letter was the Department of Justice announced that they had reached an unprecedented agreement with the Shelby County District Attorney that he would no longer prosecute aggravated prostitution cases. Now, an aggravated prostitution case is when a prostitute knowingly engages in prostitution and knowingly has HIV and where they can spread the disease to other people. And a number of states passed that back in the early 90s when really there was no treatment for HIV. So, but aggravated prostitution is there to help prevent the spread of HIV. So the Department of Justice said that they had reached this unprecedented agreement that DA Mulroy was not going to prosecute those aggravated prostitution cases. And the reason I sent the letter was because to me it appeared as if the Department of Justice, rather than attacking our state law facially in federal court, where our Attorney General would defend the actions of the General Assembly, it appeared that the Department of Justice sought out a weak, compliant, and acquiescent DA that has the same philosophies as the Biden administration to go soft on crime and then to attack our state law county by county. And what that means for my constituents is that we are no longer have equal protection under Tennessee law, because now then our district attorney has agreed not to prosecute these prostitution cases, but these same type of cases can be prosecuted in Davidson County or Ray County or Carroll County. So my constituents don't enjoy equal protection under the law. And so I sent the letter asking the Attorney General to look into these matters and to see what remedies there may be.
Okay. Well, and you brought up an interesting point there too about how if there's a flaw in the law or if there are issues with the law, for example, as you mentioned, these laws were enacted back in the early 90s when the treatment options were not available and education was obviously diminished among the public. We were still trying to figure out what it was and how it spread. So if they were to challenge the law with some kind of legal basis of, well, then you need to update the laws, because I know that when I read the press release from the DOJ, it talked about viral load, which implies that this person is being treated and the medications that they're taking is assisting in that viral load, which means they can't spread it. So then they're asserting that you're just going after them purely because they have HIV and it's a stigmatized kind of a disease, which none of that obviously has been sorted out in the General Assembly. You all haven't even had an opportunity to have anybody propose any kind of bill that would adjust the law in any way, correct?
Well, with one exception, and that is this last session, we created an avenue for women who could prove that they had been sex trafficked and had been forced into prostitution and had been convicted of aggravated prostitution as a result of having been sex trafficked, that we created an avenue for them to be able to have their record expunged. And so we were looking for ways, because a lot of
Right.
times women engage in this type of activity really not of their free will. They're
Right.
trafficked into it, and either they engage in that type of activity or they're going to be killed. And so we created a new way for them to do that. But talking about viral loads, I mean, that would require that the prostitute engaging this type of activity is actually taking the medication.
Mhm.
And we know from other evidence of other STDs that are so easily treated with common medication, that they don't even take those medications to prevent the spread of those STDs. Why would one think that they would take extra care to prevent or to take the medication to lower the viral load for HIV? So in order to believe what they want you to believe, your butter will have had to have slipped off your biscuit for that.
I like that. I'm gonna probably steal it for something else, but and so as you and I have spoken about, we talked last night about this, and we've kind of brushed up against it in this conversation already. But specifically, just so that viewers understand what specific constitutional issues this deals with in the DOJ sort of circumventing our state legislature in just engaging directly with a district attorney, a compliant district attorney in Shelby County, specifically with regard to our federal or state constitution. What are those amendments that this is obviously a clear violation of?
Yeah, so I believe this is becoming a pattern, because I think there are groups that are forcing an ideology on the rest of us. I think they have found in Shelby County, as I said earlier, a weak, compliant, acquiescent district attorney, and so you had the DOJ that has entered into this agreement about the aggravated prostitution, and again, it denies Shelby Countyans their right to equal protection. But this isn't the first time.
No.
The other case is Friends of George
Yes.
sued Mulroy in his official capacity to ban the law, or to overturn the law that we passed a couple of sessions ago,
Yes.
where we were protecting children from these adult entertainment cabaret shows, most of which were referred to in the vernacular of drag shows,
Right.
sexually explicit drag shows. Rather than attack that facially in court, they decided to come to Shelby County. So if you recall, they
Yes.
won it at the court trial level. So
Yes.
once again, Shelby Countyans are denied equal protection
Yes.
because these cabaret shows can be convicted in other
Yes.
counties in the state except for Shelby.
And that raises an interesting point to really emphasize the effect that, people will say, well, there's 96 counties. Why does it matter that they are making deals with one county? Because, for example, as just the example you raised just now, because of the fact that they did challenge it in court in Shelby County, and now it's been sitting in the 6th District Federal District Court of Appeals. The final arguments, I believe, were given February 2nd, and we're still waiting to get the verdict from there. We're waiting for the court to render a verdict. They've heard all the closing arguments from both Kentucky and Tennessee, which they were hearing in tandem. And in the meantime, you've got district attorneys in the other 93 counties who are just, they're not going to prosecute any cases that may even approach this, because if they do, and say the court renders a verdict that then nullifies their prosecution, they don't want to go to the trouble. And I kind of get that, but at the same time, look at the ripple effect that has had just by having one county affected and one DA who is willing to just completely set aside what it is our General Assembly has done and our governor has signed into law.
Right. And I will cite yet a third example, and that is we had a criminal defendant in Shelby County a number of years ago that was convicted of financial crimes, and the court gave him a 163-year sentence. And they appealed it all up and down the state courts and federal courts, and everyone agreed that it was a legal sentence. Well, this DA comes into office, and his assistant district attorney colludes with a local judge here and reduces that sentence, commutes it to time served, and released that defendant. And and that was a case of this willing, compliant DA trying to appease the restorative justice schemers, and did this. Now, I actually filed a complaint with the Board of Judicial Conduct, and that judge was reprimanded, and the decision was overturned, and that defendant had to return to jail.
Yeah.
And then I also sent a complaint to the Board of Professional Responsibility on the DA, and I've yet to hear from Board of Professional Responsibility. But we have an activist DA down here that is looking to do everything except prosecute crimes.
Yes.
And meanwhile, Memphis is becoming a war zone,
Yes.
and he is engaged in this social experiment. And I'll say this, I would encourage the district attorney, if he wants to save people, and apparently he does, I would encourage him to resign and join the ministry and engage in saving souls that way, and allow the heavy lifting of prosecuting criminals to those who actually want to make our community safer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think I read recently, because I'd recently written an article on the increase in crime in Memphis. And I was listening to Todd Starnes, one of his shows, talking about how 30% of the overall crime committed in Tennessee is committed in Memphis. And, and that's insane. I mean, that's an enormous amount of the crime. I don't know if people can get their heads around that number, but that is extraordinarily high. And it makes the area that is so beautiful and is such a, it was always such a lovely place to visit. You go, there's so many wonderful things to go visit down in Memphis. And people are just not going to go anymore because it's not worth the possibility of you parking your car somewhere and it gets broken into or stolen or whatever, or you possibly being injured by a random person on the street. If it hasn't already, I imagine it will really start to affect tourism in your area.
Well, it affects everything. We have businesses that are leaving. We have businesses that are not locating to Memphis. We have residents who are leaving. What we're witnessing is a hollowing out of Memphis's middle class.
Yeah.
And if we don't get crime turned around, Memphis will become the example of a failed American city. We will become the new Detroit. And the only people that will be left will be the extremely poor who couldn't afford to leave, and the extremely wealthy who can afford the private security to stay, but the Memphis middle class will be gone. And Tennessee won't succeed when its most famous city is sliding into chaos.
Yeah.
And you might ask, how chaotic is it really? Well, in just the first 11 days of June, we had 47 people shot, 2 stabbed, 11 killed. And we just had, a few days ago, we had a family of 4 traveling down the interstate. And they were all 4 shot in a road rage incident. And the monster that shot them was out on bond on a previous gun charge.
Wow.
And it goes right back to the policies of our DA. And he is on this mission to try to save Memphis through these liberal experiments, social experiments, and we have to put a stop to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Memphis is about one of a dozen cities in the U.S. with some of the highest HIV rates in the nation. That's what I was reading. So here's what I want people also to understand is the DA is saying, well, it's not that big of a deal. We're still able to prosecute a person who knowingly exposes another person to HIV just outside the context of sex work. Why is that? Why explain to me why there's that's an important distinction, and why that's just simply not good enough.
Well, again, I think the best way to curb the exposure of HIV to citizens, one of the ways is through this aggravated
Yeah.
prostitution statute, and that's why the General Assembly passed it. And what I think is lost on the DA sometimes is that the General Assembly is it's the public that sends us up there. It's our voters. We're speaking for the people when we pass these laws.
Mhm.
And it is his responsibility. He has taken an oath to enforce the laws.
Yeah.
And I don't think he is doing that. And so, and you're right, HIV infections and all STDs are up 40% in Shelby County from 2018. And
Wow.
this law was designed to deter that type of activity to try to drive the HIV rates down. And look, from the time that statute was passed a number of years ago, we have brought down those HIV infection rates as it relates to them being transmitted during prostitution activity. So it works, and
Yeah.
we just have to have a DA willing to enforce the law.
Yes, sir. So have you've written this letter to AG Skermetti's office. Has there been any response so far? I know you just basically sent it, but has there been any engagement from the AG's office since you sent the letter?
Not yet, and it's a bit too soon. I would not have expected to hear from him, but I will say that Skermetti's office has always been very responsive to me, and I think other lawmakers as well. And
Yes.
and I'm a Skermetti fan, and if there's anything that he can do, I feel very confident that he will do that to try to protect Shelby County
Yes,
from a
sir.
DA that really is, in my view, out of control.
Yes, sir. So you and I were just talking before we went live here, or recording, that you are working with Speaker Sexton on a possible solution for removal maybe of this, it seems overly progressive District Attorney Mulroy.
Yeah. So one of the things I have been working on since I've been in the Senate, I'm a second semester freshman, as I tell people.
Mhm.
So I've just completed my second session. One of the things I've done to try to improve Memphis's standing in the legislature and statewide is to bring other senators down to Memphis so that they can see that Memphis is more than a headline and that we are an asset worth investing in,
Yes.
and all of the things that you so beautifully said earlier about
Yes.
Memphis. I want them to see that. And so I have embarked on what I call Make Memphis Matter tours and bringing different senators down here. And
Yeah.
this past week, I had Speaker McNally down here
Okay.
all day for meetings. We were meeting with the business community and political leaders and crime victims and the rest. And probably 80% of our meeting time was taken up talking about our district attorney.
Okay.
And so when Governor McNally left, I started calling the business community, our judicial officials, law enforcement, speaking with everybody that has an interest in our criminal justice system. And I told them I was considering announcing that I'm going to file a resolution for ouster of the DA after the election. We can start filing bills and resolutions after the election. And I just wanted their input. And much to my surprise, I did not get a single person to push back. Everyone said Memphis will not survive 6 more years of this. So
Um,
I have been kind of laying the groundwork.
yeah.
And I was going to make an announcement early next week. Well, unbeknownst to me, Speaker Sexton apparently was operating on a parallel track. And
Hmm.
he announced yesterday that he was going to seek the removal of Mulroy.
Yeah.
And so I think we just had these two parallel tracks that were going together. And he
Good.
announced yesterday, I had planned on announcing on Monday,
Mhm.
but it is out there now that the General Assembly is seriously considering removing DA Mulroy. And
Okay.
I have spoken with Lieutenant Governor. He is supportive. I've spoken with Leader Johnson. He is
Yeah.
supportive. I've spoken with Chairman Yeager. So I have the entire Senate leadership that is
Good.
supportive of this.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get the resolution written, irrespective of what Speaker Sexton does. He'll follow his own track.
Sure.
But I'm going to get a resolution written, and I'm going to spend the summer looking to get as many co-sponsors as I can in anticipation of
Yeah.
me introducing the resolution and when we reconvene in January.
So the resolution not being a matter of law, but a resolution, this is our intention. This is what we want to do. Now, would Governor Lee need to be actively involved in that removal? Because I know down in Florida, Governor DeSantis had to do the actual removal. In Tennessee, what does that process look like?
Right. Great question. Great question. The way it works in Tennessee, the only way to remove a district attorney, they're not subject to a recall petition
Right.
like you see in other parts of the country. The only way to remove a district attorney is spelled out in the Constitution, and there are two methods.
Okay.
One is an impeachment, where the House would impeach, and then they would come to the Senate, and we'd sit as a jury, so to speak, and we would vote to convict. And if that were the case, he'd be removed from office and would be barred from running for office again in Tennessee. So that works very much like we see on the federal level.
Yes.
But the Constitution lays out yet another avenue, and that is that a district attorney can be removed by a 2/3 vote of both chambers, which means 22 votes in the Senate, 66 votes in the House,
Mhm.
and they can be removed really for no reason.
Wow.
And so that's the avenue that I'm pursuing. Now, I think
Okay.
Speaker Sexton may actually, I've not spoken with him, but he may be pursuing an impeachment route.
Yeah.
The route I was going to initiate, because I can't do impeachment because it has to originate in the House.
Right.
I was going to go the other route where I would just get the resolution, try to get 2/3 vote. Now, if I'm successful, we're not turning him out just because we can.
Right.
Very specifically, what he has done is last week he announced that he would no longer prosecute convicted felons who
Mhm.
were caught in possession of a firearm.
Mhm.
Now, under the federal system, that was a mandatory 5 years in incarceration.
Yeah.
He said he'll no longer prosecute those. So that will be the specific charge that I will cite in the resolution of removal, is that it's a dereliction of duty. He is not doing what he was elected to do. And
Yes.
so we'll see how this plays out, whether it'll be impeachment or ouster resolution. If I had my ruthers, I would rather the impeachment
Right.
process go forward, because he's barred from running for office again. If
Yes.
we just simply remove him under my resolution, he could actually run for the same office again.
Right, right. So that's an interesting, and I want to remind our viewers again, I've said this so many times when I have written articles frustrated about how some of the legislation tends to fail in our General Assembly, that we have a supermajority. So this should be a cakewalk. If considering that, y'all can basically, the Democrats can just not even show up, and y'all can pretty much do whatever it is you need to do. So I think it's probably you're going to get some pushback because a lot of several of our Democrats in our House body are from the Memphis area. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to it. And then I believe in the Senate isn't Senator help me, her name. Oh, don't we have one female senator that's a Democrat
We've
from
got yeah we've
London,
got yeah London Lamar.
London
Well,
Lamar? Yeah.
I've already heard from we have from Shelby County, we have Senator Ramesh Akbari, Senator Lamar, and Senator Kyle.
Yes, Senator
And
Kyle.
the remaining three Democrats in the Senate are Charlene Oliver and Jeff Yarbrough and
Yeah.
Eddie Campbell.
Yeah, and
And so
they're
that round,
all Nashville, I think.
Nashville.
Right?
So
Yeah,
three from Memphis, three from
3 from
Nashville.
Nashville. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
have already heard from one of my colleagues here in Shelby County. She was not happy that I was pursuing this route,
yeah,
but I reminded her, and she's African American.
yeah,
I reminded her that this experiment is failing,
yeah.
and that last year we had 400 people murdered in Memphis.
Oh,
90% of them were Black, 6% were Hispanic, and 4% were white. And
yeah,
I told her, I said, the white community is only afraid, they're only afraid they're going to get killed.
yeah.
The Black community is actually being
Being
killed.
killed.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to put a stop to this
Yeah,
madness. And in order to make Memphis matter, we have to make Molroy move.
yeah.
And so that's what I hope to do with this resolution. And the fact that I have all of Senate leadership already supportive of this, I think sends a signal that the Senate is serious about removal.
I think that's fantastic. I do hope that you are able to utilize the impeachment route as well, just because of the reason that you stated that he would not be able to run again. So
Right.
that would be really fantastic.
And you had asked about what role the governor plays. So if we
Yeah.
were to remove DA Mulroy, the governor would make the appointment that would
Okay,
serve until the next election.
that's great.
And if you do the election math, that means that the governor would appoint presumably a law and order
Yes,
district attorney that
yes,
would serve for 18
yeah,
months.
yeah,
So we would have a new incumbent heading into the election in
yeah,
2026. So
yeah,
I think that will make a difference. And quite frankly, I don't think DA Mulroy could get reelected. I think even the Black community is fed up with
yeah,
him because he's just pandering
yes,
to the Black community. Meanwhile, their children are dying in the streets.
they are.
And so I don't want anyone's children to die in the streets. And that's why I'm going to pursue this.
Yeah, so you would need the governor to appoint that proverbial sheriff to ride into town and clean things up like, John Wayne or Gary Cooper would do in one of those old westerns. Somebody who's just brave enough to not care about the narratives that are going to be put out in the media, but they actually care about saving lives, and that's what they're going to do despite any criticism that is thrown their way. Um,
Well, I will get a lot of criticism, but I will tell you that I'm like the weather. The weather doesn't respond to criticism, and I'm not
yeah,
going to respond to criticism either. I'm going to press forward because we have to stop these
yes,
activist DAs and
yes,
progressive DAs, and what we need instead of a progressive DA, we need an aggressive DA,
yes.
someone that's going to be aggressively in prosecuting crimes.
Yep, absolutely, 1,000% agree. So, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to make sure that the viewers understand, and any action steps that they can take to engage from where they're at in their seats? Because we do have a lot of people who go, okay, great, this is great information. So, what do I do with it? So, what is your message to those folks?
Yeah, my message would be as I get this resolution formalized and get it filed to reach out to your elected officials, your senators and representatives, and look, you may say, why am I concerned about what happens in Shelby County? It goes back to our earlier conversation we first started.
Yeah,
The Biden administration and the progressives, they are attacking our state laws on a county by county basis.
yes,
And so if you want to protect a lot of these laws that the General Assembly has passed that are
yes,
good laws, if you want to protect those, then you should be concerned about our DA in Shelby County because he is a weak, compliant, acquiescent DA and
yes,
someone who will undermine our rule of law statewide from his position in Shelby County. And so I would encourage you to reach out to your lawmakers and encourage them to support this resolution. And then the other thing I will say is I appreciate Tennessee conservative holding us accountable because there are a lot of great things that you can do with a supermajority.
yes,
But one of the downsides of a supermajority is that sometimes you can become complacent and you no longer have to defend what you do, or no longer have to convince people to come along. And
yes,
so sometimes a supermajority can be dangerous in passing laws that aren't fully vetted and
Right.
thought through because there wasn't enough debate in doing it. So,
Yes.
but I think the pros outweigh the cons of the
Yes.
supermajority.
Yes.
It's something we have to be mindful of, and Tennessee Conservative and others do a good job, I think, of holding us accountable and making sure that we only pass good legislation.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that because we do work very hard to try and inform our readers, make sure they understand the nuances of what's happening up on the Hill, because so many people, they'll see a headline and typically it's from our mainstream media and it doesn't fully explain exactly what it was that took place up there. So I mentioned to people when I go up to Cordell Hall and I sit in on a hearing and I listen, it's kind of maybe bizarre to people, but it's kind of my happy place. It's something I enjoy doing. So I do it so they don't have to. So I appreciate, the fact that you appreciate us. That's great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So what I'll make sure we do is we put the links to how people can find out who their representatives are so that they can take action and send an email or make a phone call and let them know that let their representatives know that they're aware of the situation. And this is how I would like you to vote when that resolution comes up. So then that way we can have, the power of the people behind this to, if there were any in the body that were reluctant, maybe it can help to convince them, you know what, this is what my constituents want, and I'm here to speak for them. So I am gonna go ahead and vote yes on your resolution. So
That'd be great. And, as I have brought members down here, different senators down to Memphis, they all come down here and say the same thing. And that is your crime challenge is greater than I thought, but Memphis's potential is
yes,
so much better than I thought as well. And
yes,
so, from Memphis to Mountain City and from Turtletown to Tiptonville, I
yes.
want to make Memphis matter. And so God bless y'all for the work you do and holding us accountable.
Thank you so much, Senator Taylor, for spending some time with us this morning on a Saturday, giving up your morning to chat with us. And just please let us know if there's anything else that we can do to assist you in this endeavor because we are fully supportive of it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.